Welcome to NEXTGames' Intense Ambuscade series, August 2024, against Meebles. Now, the last time we saw this particular run, it was almost 2 years ago, so let's go ahead and remind ourselves what's involved in this month's run. First, key item acquisition. Now, this month you need 1 worm kill for your first run of the day, and 3 worm kills for multiple runs in that same day. The best place I found to get this is the Home Point Warp, the Den of Rain, or Home Point number 1. Where you can run a short distance to find some worms as you see me doing here. Now, I'm sure there are other good spots as well, so don't hesitate to mention them down there in the comments. Now, this month's run can at times be frustrating, especially since each run can be kind of different. But it's normally just a slower run in those instances, but still has a fairly high success rate. Now, I'm managing to achieve easy wins this month in the 3 to 5 minute range, and normal wins in the 10 to 15 minute range, so normal wins are possible this month with the right trust setup and some patience. Now, the battle example you're seeing now is an example of what a normal run looks like, but this is also the strategy that I recommend you using on the easy setup for soloers, so go ahead and pay attention to what you see me doing here, and you can use a strategy for either of those difficulties. Now, party players should have a fairly easy time this month forming groups, as the party setup for wins isn't overly specific. Let's go ahead and get into the details of this month's run that make up our strategies. First, the main enemy this month is against a Bozzetto Breadwinner, who is a monk. There are also a Bozzetto urchins that are roaming invisible around the map that appear and attack you if the Breadwinner uses a Meeble ability when they are close by. Now, these can be slept with Lullaby, but they're going to wake shortly after that the next time the Breadwinner uses one of those Weeble abilities, so it's normally just best to take them out as quickly as you can. Also keep in mind that they have access to 100 Fist and Soul Eater, so caution needs to be taken when you do this. Lastly, there is a Bozzetto Housemaker, who will start the fight in the far corner of the arena and is not targetable, but who you will need to be contending with during this fight to achieve victory. Let's start by discussing the Breadwinner. He will be using 100 Fist sometime around 50% health, and keep in mind that it's going to last 45 seconds, and during this time, he's going to have Gale Spikes up that will inflict slow on anyone who melees him. So you're normally going to want to turn your back during these 45 seconds and just try and keep your shadows up. Now, in regards to abilities that you will see, first one we'll talk about is Thrashing Assault, which is a 4-hit damage ability that will also inflict defense down. Now, this is absorbed by 4 shadows. Drill Claw does physical damage down and can inflict max HP and TP down, but this is also blocked by shadows, so try and keep those shadows up. Now, the rest of the abilities that you're going to see used are Warbles, and these are the abilities that will call forth the urchins if they happen to be within range, so you need to watch out for this. And they all have a few second readying time, so you have a few seconds to get up a bar spell if you see one being activated that you don't like the effects of. Let's go ahead and talk about those effects really quick, because some of them are quite nasty. In the case of the Fire Meeble Warble, it's going to inflict Plague. That will inflict 50 hit points, magic points, and 300 TP down per tick. The next one is a Blizzard Meeble Warble that's going to inflict paralysis and 50 hit points down per tick through the Frost effect. The next one is the Arrow Warble, and it's going to inflict silence and 50 hit points per down through the Choke effect. The next one is a Stone Meeble Warble, and it's going to inflict petrification and 50 hit points per down through the Rasp effect. Next, the Thunder Meeble inflicts shock and 50 hit points per tick down through the shock effect. And lastly, the Water Meeble will inflict poison and 50 hit points per tick down through drown. Now, if you cast the corresponding element bar spell like I mentioned a second ago, it's going to go ahead and resist the effects of the Warble. So I recommend subbing White Mage or Red Mage this month if you're solo to put up Bar Fire on yourself and negate the nastiness of these Warbles. Now, if you're in a party setup, your White Mage can either stick to just using Barfira and Barstonra to negate the 2 nastiest ones that most groups will try to avoid, or try and cast a bar spell for each Warble that the Meeble ends up using. Now, in addition to the nasty effects of these Warbles, every time he uses one, he has a chance to pull in any of the nearby urchins. Now, you can significantly reduce the range that these are called in by using silence on the Breadwinner. So I also recommend that you do this with your sub job if you're solo, having either the White Mage or the Red Mage sub job, or have your White Mage, if you're in a party setup, keep him silenced. Now, other than those items, your group should just focus all their damage on the main Breadwinner and only divert when an urchin happens to spawn. Now keep in mind that while silence does reduce the range of the urchins to be called, it does not eliminate it. So some runs you won't get any, and others you're still going to get several. Though the only other thing that you need to pay attention to is that the housemaker on the far end of the field is actually going to join your run at some point. At a random amount of time, he's going to stand up and charge at whoever has generated the most hate by casting bar spells. This will normally be your white mage. Now the white mage needs to notice this as soon as he's standing up and run away from the group. This is because as soon as the housemaker gets within range of the white mage, he's going to use an AoE ability that will do 1000 damage for every person in range that it hits. Trusts are included in this. So if it just hits the white mage is only going to take 1000 damage. If it happens to hit another player as well, both the white mage and that other player will both take 2000 damage. And if it happens to hit 3 players, all will take 3000 damage, and so on. Now once the housemaker uses the Earthshaker AoE ability, he will then run to another part of the arena and sit down for a period of time before repeating this same process. So you must always keep an eye on him and when it is he's going to be standing up, so that the person who's cast the most borrow spells can actually go ahead and try and get into a safe distance to not kill any of the other players or themselves. Now if you're solo, you need to keep this in mind at all times and make sure your trusts are kept at a distance from you when you fight the breadwinner, so that if the housemaker happens to sneak up on you, it doesn't kill everyone. Now for solo players, I recommend the setup of Joachim, Monborough, Korumoru, Yoran Oran, and Sethus that you're seeing me use here. Now this setup continually regenerates HP, MP, and TP to the party, which is what this group needs to survive through the normal wins. Now you can get away with using just Joachim, Korumoru, Kupipi, Yoran Oran, and Arkiv on the easy difficulty if you don't have the trust that I mentioned before, or if you just don't want to tank. Just keep in mind that you must still use bar fire to make sure that you yourself get hate on the housemaker for that when he charges at you, and be sure to position yourself between him and your trust so that they don't get hit. Now for groups, really all that's mandatory is that a white mage is there for the bar spells and the silence. Otherwise, you can normally fill the other slots with a standard tank, 2 buffing jobs such as Bard and Corsair or Geomancer, and 2 DDs. That's about all I have to go over for this month. Go ahead and enjoy the rest of this normal battle example, and have a great month everyone. We'll see you next time.